This is Arkies in the Beltway, your look at national politics and the Arkansans influencing the discussions. I'm Alex Thomas, Washington correspondent for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, reporting from the nation's capital. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Arkies in the Beltway for the week of April 6th, 2025. A busy start to the weekend in Congress's upper chamber. The U.S. Senate worked Friday evening into the early Saturday morning hours to approve a budget framework with sights on spending reductions and preserving the 2017 tax cuts. 51 Republicans backed the plan. Kentucky's Rand Paul and Maine's Susan Collins joined 46 Senate Democrats against passage. Arkansas Senators, Republicans John Boozman of Rogers and Tom Cotton of Little Rock, supported the framework. The Democrat-Gazette spoke with both senators, including Cotton, right before the late-night vote-a-rama.
This is not the final step, but this is a critical next step to continuing on to what we think will be a very important piece of legislation later this year.
The Senate framework calls on most committees in the Senate and House of Representatives to submit plans for cutting federal spending over the next decade. Congressional Republicans want to combine this with a boost in investment in defense and border security, keeping tax breaks in place, and increasing the debt ceiling. Boozman notes a mutual Senate-House plan would be considered through reconciliation, allowing the Senate to avoid needing the 60 votes necessary for advancing most legislation.
When you're increasing spending, decreasing spending, you can use this special vehicle, and the advantage is that it only takes 51 votes to get something passed.
Boozman will have a role in putting forward recommendations for spending cuts. The Senate Agriculture Committee, which he chairs, will need to suggest $1 billion in reductions, with those cuts happening over a 10-year period. Compare this to the House Agriculture Committee, which will need to come up with $230 billion worth of cuts. Boozman says he has already been talking to colleagues, including House Agriculture Committee Chair G.T. Thompson, about possible next steps.
We don't want to get to the point we actually impact and significantly impair services.
Democrats in both the Senate and House have opposed Republicans' plans, fearing how spending cuts could impact government programs. In Boozman's case, his committee and the House Agriculture Committee have jurisdiction over the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, more commonly known as food stamps. The House Energy and Commerce Committee, which oversees matters involving Medicaid, would need to recommend $880 billion in spending cuts. Democratic Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon serves as the ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee.
These cuts may be partisan in Congress, but their consequences will transcend party lines. Medicaid cuts are going to hit red and rural parts of America the hardest.
As Senate Republicans woke up Saturday, they saw early opposition from their House GOP counterparts. House Budget Committee Chair Jody Arrington describing the Senate resolution as, quote, unserious and disappointing. Cotton again from Friday evening, optimistic congressional Republicans will come around in passing a plan that meets President Donald Trump and the GOP's shared policy goals.
Very few senators and congressmen will look at this budget tonight or look at the legislation ultimately produces. I think that is the perfect piece of legislation that I would have written if it was just me. Rarely that's the case. We always have to compromise. We have to find consensus. We have to take into account divergent interests across the country that we all represent in our states and in our districts.
The House Republican Conference holds 220 seats in Congress's lower chamber, but House Speaker Mike Johnson has struggled at times to convince the full caucus to move in unison. The Senate's consideration of the budget framework came after financial markets experienced 2 chaotic days. U.S. stocks experienced their worst days since the coronavirus pandemic in response to the Trump administration's sweeping tariffs on imported goods from other countries. Representative French of Little Rock discussed the tariffs during a telephone town hall last Thursday. He said tariffs can be used as diplomatic tools, but disagreed with the move placing tariffs on Canada and Mexico.
I don't support across-the-board tariffs as a general matter, and so I don't support those, and I will be urging changes there because I don't think they will end up raising a bunch of revenue that's been asserted. I wish I thought they did, but personally I don't think they will.
The congressman has a history of holding telephone town halls during periods of legislative business. Last Thursday's forum, however, happened as Hill and other Arkansas lawmakers faced pressure back home to have in-person events in the natural state. A key House committee advanced legislation to regulate certain digital assets with hopes of establishing a nationwide standard. The House Financial Services Committee approved the Stable Act in a lengthy markup last Wednesday. The bill affects payment stablecoins, which are digital assets used for payment and valued at amounts pegged to assets like the U.S. dollar. Representative Hill is the committee's chair. He said the bill is a necessary step in creating federal oversight, catching up to some state-level agencies as well as foreign governments who are already regulating stablecoins.
To date, state regulation has allowed stablecoin ecosystem to develop in the United States, but for payment stablecoins to reach their full potential, a clear federal framework must be an option.
Both Republicans and Democrats have eyed such regulations as cryptocurrencies and other digital assets have grown more popular. Most committee Democrats, however, oppose the Stable Act, citing the president and his family's interest in digital asset markets. A firm launched by Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump plans to launch a stablecoin tied to the U.S. dollar. The president and First Lady Melania Trump announced meme coins ahead of Inauguration Day in January. California Representative Maxine Waters, the committee's top Democratic member, condemned the Trump family's actions.
With this stablecoin bill, this committee is setting an unacceptable and dangerous precedent, validating the president and his insiders' efforts to write rules of the road that will enrich themselves at the expense of everyone else.
Speaking to reporters before the hearing, Hill acknowledged the Trump family's actions have made legislative efforts more complicated. A Republican committee staffer telling reporters that the Stable Act creates equal standards for parties interested in issuing stablecoins. Investment banker Warren Stevens spent time last week on Capitol Hill as the president's pick to serve as the next ambassador to the United Kingdom. Trump named Stevens, the former head of Little Rock-based Stevens Incorporated, as the next ambassador to the Court of St. James's back in December. Stevens retired as president and CEO of his family's investment firm in January. He did retain the title of chairman, but he also promised senators in his ethics agreement to resign from the firm and leave other businesses if confirmed. Stevens promised the Senate Foreign Relations Committee during its hearing last Tuesday to use his ambassadorship to advance the president's America First agenda.
The United Kingdom is one of our closest allies. Our special relationship is built on shared interests and values, mutual respect, and a commitment to global security and prosperity. Our collaboration spans every area, from defense to trade to cultural exchanges. The UK is a strong partner in tackling the toughest challenges throughout the world, as the UK is a top contributor to NATO.
Stevens expressed interest in pushing the United Kingdom to take a leading role in ending the Ukraine-Russia war. He also favored reviewing the U.S.-UK trade partnership and updating terms in light of the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union. Another Arkansan inching closer to receiving the Senate's approval as the next ambassador to Israel. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee advanced Mike Huckabee's nomination to the full chamber. Huckabee, Arkansas's 44th governor, spent much of his March 25th hearing promising to represent the Trump administration's vision for the Middle East. He also spent time distancing himself from past comments on Palestine and its people. And that'll do it for this edition of Arkies in the Beltway for the week of April 6th, 2025. You can stay up to date with all news involving Arkansas at arkansasonline.com. Special thanks as always to the team down in Little Rock. I'm Alex Thomas, and this has been Arkies in the Beltway. Thanks for listening.